Head coach of the Buckeyes is with us, Chris Holtmann. We're going to ask Chris to start off with a statement on his ball club being here in Tulsa. Then we'll go to questions. Chris, please.
Okay, excited about obviously tomorrow night, late game. We're playing a terrific Iowa State team who's had an outstanding year. Steve and his team obviously have been playing really well here of late. We are excited, like I said, about the opportunity. I think we've had some really good moments of play here in the last couple weeks, really in the last week and a half. So going to be a great challenge, but most of these games this time of year are. So.
First question, right there in the aisle. Thank you.
Hey.
Chris, if you would talk about the significance of consecutive years in the NCAA tournament and just how a program shoots to try and be in the tournament more often than not.
Well, Paul, I think it's really important for your program as when you take over, as you're trying to kind of grow it in the way that you and your staff would like for it to be. I think you want kids who are excited about playing this time of year and have that as a goal, and not only playing but advancing and moving forward and playing as long as possible. We always talk about wanting to recruit kids that want to play for championships, and I think that's going to be really important for us as we move forward. We've obviously got a lot of young guys on our team. That's been well documented. I think having those guys get some experience last year, although we have some of those young guys who didn't play a whole lot in last year's 2 games. They're going to play a lot in this year's game, but having our young guys that are currently on our roster play, I think, can only help us moving forward. But it's really, really important. Can't overstate how important it is to be able to start off these 2 years being in the tournament.
Doug Haller with The Athletic. Chris, just a few minutes ago, Bobby Hurley was up there sitting down talking about the emotions of going against his former school.
Yeah.
You went through that last year when you played Butler. Can you just kind of explain the emotions that a coach goes through playing the school where he built something just a few years before?
It's miserable. It's miserable. It was the worst coaching experience of my life. And I hate to overstate it, but I'm really not. That was pretty fresh, given I think there's been, 3 or 4 years? 4 years. So it's different. But you still feel tied in a lot of ways emotionally to the program and to the school. Our staff was 6 months removed, really. So the timing of it was miserable. You have very conflicted feelings. You feel compelled to prepare your current team as well as possible, and yet at the same time, in our case, we had recruited all those guys, and it's just it's a conflicted feeling, and I think you wouldn't be human if that wouldn't be the case. The good thing for him is there's been some separation of years, and I don't know how many players that he recruited, but obviously he recruited the coach, and there's some emotional ties there.
Yeah, hi Chris, Garen Emick from the Tulsa World. We ask the basketball coach over at Oklahoma all the time about managing in the shadow of a football giant. And I know you've covered this ground with probably your beat writers up in Columbus, but while you're here, I'd like to ask how your philosophy on that and how you've accepted that challenge, especially coming from Butler, where obviously basketball maybe was on a different plane in terms of the athletic department. Are you telling me we're at a football school? I've heard that. Okay. I'm not going to say. Breaking news. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's interesting. I do think there's some real. You're talking about Lon. You've talked to Lon about that. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's a different, right? It's different. And as you mentioned, Butler, where it was driven really in a lot of ways by men's basketball. It's a dynamic that, in a lot of ways, I've really enjoyed seeing a program that has been so successful for so long, and I've kind of we've tried to really embrace that and use it for what we believe the strengths that it can be for our program.
I think that anytime you are, working alongside programs that have achieved excellence, that can be inspiring, encouraging. That can be a real positive thing, and that's how we've chosen to look at it, and that's how we'll continue to do that. And we've really enjoyed it. Certainly, it's different. The passion in some ways are different when, and I get that, and I understand that. And I think I had a decent understanding of it going in, but it's once you're in it, you recognize it for what it is, and we've kind of chosen to embrace it.
Quick follow-up: Have you embraced it to the point where you use that in terms of recruiting? I mean, do you? I know that the guys at OU, for instance,
sure,
will gladly show off, the Switzer
Sure.
Center and the stadium on fall afternoons and that kind of thing. Is that something that you do up in Columbus?
I think part of embracing it is in fact that it is showing, whether it's facilities or there've been a number of times where we've had recruits spend time with Urban in the past, and we'll do it with Ryan in the future. So absolutely, I think that's part of it. Our staffs have collaborated on things, talked about recruiting a lot. There have been some football, basketball recruits that we've spent time with. So it has been a collaborative thing. It's going to continue to be that. We've got a tremendous AD in Gene Smith, who I think recognizes, as we all do, how important football is. But also I think he has an appreciation for what we can be as a basketball program, and that's all you can ask for.
Chris, if you would, and you've talked to us in Columbus about it, but having a guy like Keyshawn Woods as a senior playing the way he has as of late, and does that kind of make you think that it's a guy that sees where his career is and doesn't want it to end any sooner than it has to?
Yeah, I think there's been, and we've talked about this, I think there's been tremendous value in just that, what you said. Him being a guy who is one of our better players, who his goal from day one has been, how do I get to the tournament? And that's been his focus, and that's been his mindset. And he understands that what happens next in terms of his future, he'll continue to play. But really, his focus has been, how do I get our team to the tournament? And he's been successful in doing that. And obviously, he wants to stay here as long as possible. So, it's encouraged us to maybe look at that type of a young man in his, in another recruiting class. Because I think the addition of him, it's different. This group needed some experience in a lot of ways. It was imperative, but he's had that mindset and that approach has had great value for us.
Hi, Chris. Colin Gannan, SGSR. Your team played a Gonzaga team last year in the round of 32 that was coming off of a WCC title. Iowa State, of course, coming off of a Big 12 tournament title this year. Is there anything different or special that you tell your teams in preparation for a team that is on a streak or coming off of a conference title?
I think you just have to recognize how much confidence they're playing with right now, and I think it means it's important for us to have a good start. We did not have a great start in the Gonzaga game. We were fortunate to climb back and actually take the lead in the second half. But I do think the reality is they're playing as good as a handful of teams in the country. They are. And we know the environment is going to be very much a road environment. And we expect that, given how well they travel and the location. So we'll need to be good. We'll need to be good from the start.